Hello. The 2023 election buzz in our dear country, Nigeria, is still on. The controversies surrounding the exercise on February 25th are still very much around. Some of the contentions gave rise to the postponement of the second phase of the election, which is now billed for March 18. Despite the surprising outcome, many Nigerians can't seem to get over the perception that the polls were rigged, rightly or wrongly. In summary, the BVAS has been reconfigured. Nigeria in 28 states will be filing out to elect governors and state legislators, while 8 other states will just have the legislative elections. Many voters had a mindset of expectations on how the INEC was to present the results. As indicated in the Electoral Act, it can be seen clearly that many of such assumptions were wrong. Some of those assumptions form the basis of our review today on deepening the conversation. You are most delightedly welcome to this series drawn from the regular Friday column Conversation with Azu, a weekly diary on life and politics. Azu, the award-winning columnist, is right here to expand the scope of the conversation. It's good to have you, sir.
It's my pleasure to be back here again, Julius. Thanks for having me.
All right. I infer from your election day story that there were so many misconceptions about how the BVAS and the IREF system works. Do you think it is down to our own concern as Nigerians, our lethargy towards issues that do not immediately concern us? And why do you think we should blame INEC for this?
Well, thank you very much for that question, Julius. But it's not a blame game for me. And I don't think it's solely down to lethargy, to use the expression. I think that INEC has also reflected on the moment, and it's quite obvious that at some point during the awareness or enlightenment program about what the BVAS can and cannot do, it dropped the ball. So yes, I think that there was, if you like, a certain sense of overpromise, but there was also, INEC could have done a lot more to sensitize and make people aware about what this change, because remember that it's a system that was going to be used at the scale at which it was used for the first time since it was first introduced in Anambra in, I think, 2021 or so. So this was going to be the first time when it was going to be deployed at full scale. And I think that INEC may have underestimated its responsibility in specific regard to public awareness and enlightenment.
Against this background, is it then justified that the allegations that the polls were rigged, does it make sense? Does it have logic?
Well, I think it's not a binary. I will not offer a binary answer of yes or no, because I think it's slightly more complicated than that. Of course, the concern started after there was a significant moment of delay in uploading to the IREF, as INEC had widely promised. And of course, when that did not happen as quickly as people expected it was going to happen, there was anxiety all over, justifiably to some extent, about what may have happened and what may not have happened at that time. So I think that was the beginning of this concern of potential tampering with the result of the vote. But I do not think that if you look at the result of the election as a whole, and you look at the interesting outcomes in many strongholds of some of the politicians we expected would do better or worse, then I think that it would be fair to say that, yes, there were drawbacks, there were disappointments, but I think on the whole, in my view, it reflected to a significant extent the sort of outcome that one would expect from the polls.
And one of the political parties, actually, as you infer in your column, which is the subject of why we are here, splintered into several groups long before the elections even came to pass. And now they are contesting the outcome. In fact, in spite of the fact that they didn't present a uniform front in order to overthrow the ruling party. What do you have to say to this in relation to?
Well, I think you are referring to a section or a part of my column where I talked about what the APC did in 2014, 2015 when he wanted to
exactly
launch the PDP
precisely
from power. and then how we saw the inverse, so to speak, of that in the current election. I mean, one would have expected that the PDP would use, if you like, the playbook of the APC and then present a united front. But that, of course, didn't happen. I think that was when the problem started, because, as they say, a house divided against itself cannot stand. That does not mean that the other parties didn't have problems, but you would notice that by the time it came to elections, PDP was so significantly divided and fragmented, it was going to be always difficult for it to present a formidable opposition to the APC.
Okay, what's your advice to the INEC following the postponement of the elections and then given the follow-up that is coming, the governorship and National Assembly elections, State Houses of Assembly elections coming up tomorrow? What do you think the INEC can do better that they failed to do in the presidential polls?
Well, thank you for that question. I think lessons have been learned by all parties. And let me also say that parties who felt dissatisfied by the outcome of the election are perfectly entitled to seek redress as prescribed under the law. And as you know, it's not just PDP. The Labour Party has also gone to court. And interestingly, even the APC has also gone to court to seek a mandate to inspect, So but all parties are entitled to seek a redress through legitimate channels and legitimate means. But as I say, we cannot throw away the baby with the bathwater. So, but what I think INEC has learned lessons. I would like to think so. That was also the reason why the election was postponed for a week, to give the parties who were dissatisfied a chance to inspect the back end of the data that INEC said, and then also to give INEC time to reconfigure, if you like, the BVAS, so that we. So on the whole, I think that 1 week is a long time in politics, and it's also must be a long time for INEC. I do not imagine that in the March 18 election, people are going to give INEC the sort of latitude they have asked for and have taken the 1 week, which is fair enough. But I do not imagine that people are going to give INEC the sort of latitude they were given the first time. It's going to be a rare second chance to get it right again. And I do hope, for the sake of all of us who really believe that the system ought to work and work better, that they do a better job of it this time.
All right. Thank you very much for that response. And I'll follow up with the cash crunch policy was taken to prevent vote buying. And again, it has been reversed before the governorship elections, which is also on a national scale. Do you think that policy or that decision has served any purpose?
Well, I don't know how much cash you have in your pocket, but I can tell you...
Very little.
I can tell you, as far as this cash matter is concerned, we're all facing very severe crisis of supply of our legitimate cash, if you like. But that's by the way. I do not. I imagine that for people who had to travel, some people had estimated that they'll go for the presidential election on the 25th and then maybe stay back. Those who did not register in specific locations, and then maybe not have to travel. And stay and finish it all. But the whole thing has been extended by a week. And so for people who have businesses to do outside their immediate locations and who have had to travel, I bet that whatever has happened now, because I still see banks, I see what's happening, this sort of situation. Yes, the crowd, not to talk about the glitches that even for people who want to make
online transfers.
Online transfers. So I do not think that that the so-called reversal, which some people have even criticized as partial adherence to what the Supreme Court says, I do not think it will have a significant. But also keep in mind when we are talking about voter turnout, and I think it's also important to. This is a country we do not have the sort of respect for data and data maintenance that we ought to have. The 93 or so million people that were said to be on INEC's register, if that INEC database is subjected to proper audit, it will be interesting to find out how many people are dead since they registered, or how many people are located, have relocated, and therefore how many people are actually available in spite of the setback of the last 1 or 2 weeks to go to the location where they registered to actually exercise their vote. It will be interesting to see the sort of outcome we get this time.
All right, thank you very much. Your last word, and I would like you to speak particularly to whether or not you think this, what has happened is going to affect the outturn or the turnout of voters on election day.
Well, it's hard to say because, again, let me use the tired phrase that a day, or never mind a week, is a long, long time in politics. I think that, and I've heard this said, that a number of some of the parties, especially the opposition parties, will be hard done by the extension because they do not have as much resources as the more established parties to be able to deploy and stay on the course for another 1 week or so. But we'll have to wait and see whether or not the postponement has given advantage to one party as against the other. It's something we will all have to wait and see. But I think that on the whole, and this is where I land on this matter, I hope that the lessons of the last 1 week or so will be learned by all parties concerned, and that together we will all work to ensure that the outcome and the process is far more acceptable and that it succeeds. That's the least that we owe ourselves. That's the least we owe the continent as the largest democracy on the continent, and that is the least that we owe ourselves as the largest. 1 out of every 4 black person is
a Nigerian.
That's the least that we owe ourselves as one of the largest black nations in the world.
All right, thank you for coming on the show, Azu. Thank you for watching, listeners. Conversation with Azu is published every Friday on the back page of Leadership newspaper and syndicated on the Vanguard of the same date. It is further syndicated offshore, across continent, in South Africa, in Ghana, in Europe, and in the United States of America. Be sure to follow, share the contents of this page as we deepen the conversation on this program every now and then. Thank you for staying tuned.
Thank you for having me.